Hello and welcome to the day ahead. It is Tuesday, June 24th. I'm Andrew Gagan. Well, the local share market is set to rally this morning with ASX futures up close to 0.75%. This follows improved investor sentiment globally as Iran launched retaliatory attacks against US air bases in the Middle East, which were successfully intercepted, with US President Donald Trump later announcing a ceasefire is due to come into effect later today between Iran and Israel. Well, the oil market took it as a sign that Iran is unlikely to follow through with threats to disrupt exports, sending crude prices plunging. Global equity markets advanced, while on Wall Street investors were further buoyed by the prospect of the US Federal Reserve cutting interest rates as early as next month. All three majors closing sharply higher, led by consumer discretionary stocks. Among the Mag 7, Tesla led the way. After the long-awaited launch of the company's robo-taxi service in Austin, Texas, the EV maker's shares advancing more than 7%. Northern Trust jumped after a Wall Street Journal report said the Bank of New York Mellon broached the topic of a potential merger. AI server maker Supermicro Computer fell heavily after it announced a private offering of $2 billion 5-year convertible bonds. And quarterly results from sportswear company Nike and package delivery firm FedEx are expected later in the week. The oil majors, they fell reflecting the drop in crude prices. And among the US defence stocks, they ended in mixed territory. Well, Iran has failed to follow through with threats to disrupt oil and gas tanker traffic through the Straits of Hormuz, but instead has attacked US military bases in Qatar and in Iraq in retaliation for US attacks on its nuclear facilities. Iran's missile attack on the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar was intercepted with no casualties reported. US President Donald Trump dismissed it as a weak response to the US attacks while urging Iran and Israel to make peace. Subsequently, he's posted on his social media platform that there will be a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, at which point the war would be considered ended. However, Israel has continued its air assault on Iran, hitting more targets in Tehran. Well, investors on Wall Street appear to be more interested in comments from Federal Reserve officials, with Vice Chair for Supervision Michelle Bowman saying the time to cut interest rates appear imminent, saying should inflation pressures remain contained, I would support lowering the policy rate as soon as our next meeting in order to bring it closer to its neutral setting and to sustain a healthy labour market. While fellow Fed member Austin Goolsbee has said the surprise has been that so far at least we've had 3 months of inflation data where there hasn't been much inflation. If we do not see inflation resulting from these tariff increases, then in my mind we never left what I was calling the golden path. Well, yields on US Treasuries fell in response to the Fed comments, the 2-year down to 3.81% while the 10-year was at 4.34%. And the US dollar has also fallen while it's come under pressure as it appears more likely that Iran's retaliation to the US bombings would be limited. The Aussie dollar rising to 64.7 US cents. And risk on sentiment has seen Bitcoin climb to close to 106,000 US dollars. Well, oil prices settled more than 7% lower, losing more than $5 a barrel after Iran took no action to disrupt oil and gas tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, with the geopolitical risk premium coming out of the price. Brent crude futures closing down at $71 a barrel, but is down some 9% in after-hours trade. Copper was up around 1.5%, iron ore rising marginally to $93 a tonne, and gold initially gained but has since fallen back to around $3,350 an ounce. On the corporate calendar today, Collins Foods releases its earnings report and there are investor briefings from Fletcher Building and Treasury Wine Estates. That is your day ahead. See you again tomorrow.